Hi everyone, Lexi here. Death is a hard sell for JRPG fans. I should know, I'm one of them. I'm the kind of player who'll reload a save the second someone faints in a battle, just to avoid using a Phoenix down. And yet, here I am somehow, hooked on a game that makes death the entire point of the experience. Lost Eidolons Veil of the Witch takes the series' tactical JRPG-inspired combat, that's a mouthful, and builds an entire roguelite structure around that. And not only does it work, it might even point to a new path for how JRPGs could evolve. But I want to be clear, Veil of the Witch is a smaller, more focused game, priced at just $25. That's part of its magic. Sometimes scaling down actually makes a game feel bigger in impact. Think Uncharted Lost Legacy or Infamous First Light. Bite-sized spin-offs that ended up being just as beloved as the mainline titles. For me, Veil of the Witch isn't merely a companion piece. It's the perfect entry point for anyone curious about this series. And for the folks who've been trying to get me to try Lost Eidolons for a long time, your wishes have been granted. Many thanks to Ocean Drive Studios for providing me with this PS5 game code for this review. Lost Eidolons Veil of the Witch will also be available on Nintendo Switch, Xbox Series X and S, and PC on October 9th. The Veil of the Witch's gameplay loop is simple but brilliant. Each expedition begins on a branching map that also serves as your checkpoint, where you choose your path towards a boss. Along the way, you hit camps to heal, shops to spend your gold, special events, and of course, battles. Runs start with 5 characters, including your own warrior, and a mix of archetypes like a paladin healer and a berserker. Over time, you can recruit more, eventually unlocking up to 9 total. These recruits mirror core classes, but each brings their own twist. When you eventually fall, and you will fall, you're sent back to town. But instead of losing everything, you carry back sacred embers to spend on permanent upgrades across 3 skill trees, which will affect your future runs in surprisingly meaningful ways. This loop makes failure feel meaningful. Every run turns mistakes into progress, and each return adds permanent changes that shape the next expedition. Equipment works differently too, because you don't buy or replace gear between runs. Instead, you find resonance stones that slot into your weapons and armor during an expedition. They can change how a character plays, unlock stronger abilities, enhancing traits, or giving someone an edge you didn't expect. Because they're tied to the run, each squad ends up feeling distinct, and that keeps the battles exciting. One of my favorite builds came from Evie, who rocks the paladin healer combo. Thanks to the stones and skills I picked up, every time she attacked, the entire party got a small heal. She also has a passive where, if an ally next to her kept dipping into critical health, she'd heal them up automatically. And on that same run, she even learned a party-wide health regeneration spell that lasted 2 turns. It was one of those moments where I thought, this is why I love this game. That variety carries over into the biomes and battle encounters themselves. While biomes repeat, you'll see grassy fields, snowy wastes, and the like more than once, enemy lineups, hazards, and event variations keep things from going stale. Later battles even ramp up the difficulty on familiar maps, forcing you to rethink strategies you thought you had figured out. And it's built on a combat system that feels instantly familiar, especially if you played Fire Emblem or the original Lost Eidolons. You're moving units on a grid, exploiting weaknesses, and making the most of every skill. But it's faster, tighter, and easier to read. No fuss, and certainly no wasted time, just some really good tactical tension in bite-sized battles. What's interesting is that gaining experience to level up requires actually using abilities, which makes every decision feel like it has to count. Did you remember to switch Marco into his offensive or defensive stance after repositioning him? Do you spend Evie's turn swapping to her healing books to patch someone up so they can risk grabbing a distant treasure chest? Because growth is tied to staying active, you're constantly pushed to maximize your choices. That's where the limited rewind system comes in. It gives you just enough room to test a different outcome, but not enough to erase every mistake. I only used it once, in a fight where my entire squad perished. Replaying that encounter with a different strategy turned a hopeless battle into one of my most satisfying wins. It keeps runs fair. If you lose, it's usually because you didn't recognize the strategy. But the next time, you will. And here's something new Roguelite fans will appreciate. There's no permadeath. If you manage to win a fight with even one character standing, the rest will revive at 1 HP. That way, battles are tense without feeling punishingly cruel. But if your squad does survive longer and you're able to maximize the use of their skills, they'll level up, giving you choices like new passives or new skills. And even if those upgrades vanish when the run ends, the sense of growth is real. And these bite-sized battles are addicting in the best way. I remember one night telling myself, okay, you need to go to bed, Lexi, just one more match. And even then, I wanted to squeeze in a couple more. That's the pull of it. You always want to see what the next upgrade will look like, or what reward might be waiting at the next checkpoint. One odd quirk worth mentioning. The game sends you back to the previous checkpoint instead of restarting the encounter. That means you can essentially roll for a different fight if you don't like what you got. I asked the devs about it, and they're aware but chose to leave it in. Personally, it didn't ruin the experience, but it's something you should know going in. But quirks aside, what impressed me most was how Veil of the Witch handles difficulty. The rewind option, for example, is limited enough that it doesn't compromise the challenge, but it acknowledges the reality that tactical battles can run long and mistakes happen. That balance makes the difficulty accessible without watering it down. And even with those concessions, I still died. A lot. But every single time, I wanted to jump back in. Despite reviewing other games alongside this one, I kept catching myself thinking, when can I carve out more time to play Veil of the Witch? That's how you know a game has its hooks on you. But it's not just these systems that shine. The world and characters do too. The game balances its grim, desperate premise with just enough levity and character moments. The cast is small, but thanks to great voice acting and sharp writing, they feel like people worth fighting alongside. Between expeditions, you'll even get chances to chat with allies. These small conversations build bonds that add minor combat bonuses, not romance, but camaraderie, and it fits neatly into the roguelite pacing. You play as an amnesiac warrior, initially named Ash, male or female with voice dialogue, who makes a pact with Sable, a mysterious woman with her own agenda. Together with your allies, you resist the Empire occupying the land of Anareos, while uncovering the darker secrets the island hides. The story beats are delivered in a visual novel style, with illustrated characters against painted backdrops. It's clean, stylish, and just the right presentation that allows you to take in the story quickly without taking you away from the gameplay for too long. The opening does take a little longer to set the stage, but after that, narrative moments land almost perfectly, giving focus to your expeditions without drowning you in excessively long cutscenes. And while Hades set the gold standard for weaving story into roguelites, Veil of the Witch finds its own rhythm. It's not as narratively dense or fast-paced as Hades, and quite frankly, it shouldn't be. Hades' action combat thrives on constant returns to the hub and frequent chatter, while Veil of the Witch's tactical gameplay asks you to stay on the field longer. Even then, Veil of the Witch keeps its pacing tight for the genre, which is quite an impressive balancing act coming from a style of play known for its epic 20-plus minute skirmishes. Presentation-wise, Veil of the Witch is smartly streamlined. In the original Lost Eidolons, battles would zoom in to show full squads clashing like Fire Emblem. Here, it's just a small band of fighters unleashing hell, snappy, immediate, and often visceral. It's also a darker game than Fire Emblem, with a grim edge to its visuals, but it never tips into being unpleasant. The bits of levity from your characters cut through at just the right moments, keeping the tone balanced.
So soon you return.
Sorry. Third time's the charm?
A big part of why that balance works is the voice acting. For a game at this price point, it's superb. You can tell that the actors were into it, and they were certainly not phoning it in. The inflections, pauses, and little quirks of delivery bring out who these characters are. The actors embodied their characters in a way that makes them feel alive and have a strong presence, even in short scenes.
We're a traveling theater troupe. This is my assistant, Eleanor. Richter, our jester.
Your what?
He doesn't speak.
On the technical side, performance on PS5 was rock solid. I love being able to crank combat speed up to 4x, which made experimenting with tactics painless. At $25, Veil of the Witch feels like one of the smartest buys of the year. It takes the strategy of Lost Eidolons and reshapes it into something leaner, sharper, and far more experimental. And it nails it. What I love most is how it reframes failure. In most JRPGs, death feels like losing control, a mistake that wipes away your progress and forces you to start over. But here, it's the opposite. Even when you die, you carry something forward. You still have choices, you still have influence, and you still shape the next run. That shift is empowering, almost like it rewires the way you think about defeat. That design also makes sense in today's landscape. Not every RPG can be a 100-hour epic with ballooning budgets. But Veil of the Witch proves that smaller, tighter experiments can deliver experiences just as memorable. It's the story of a ragtag group pushing back against an empire. And, perhaps fittingly, the game itself feels like a smaller team, making a big impact. And for me personally, this wasn't just my first real taste of the Lost Eidolons world. It felt like rediscovering tactical RPGs themselves. I've never been the biggest fan of the genre, but Veil of the Witch pulled me in so strongly that even while juggling other reviews, I kept wanting to come back. That pull, the need to see how the next run would unfold, it's what makes this game special. So while Lost Eidolons Veil of the Witch was intended to be a kind of a spin-off, it doesn't feel that way to me. In fact, it's one of the best games of 2025. It proves that death and the sting of failure doesn't strip away control. It's what empowers you most.